Friday nights at Miller's Corner were always loud. The little diner sat on the corner of Main and Fifth, glowing under a neon sign that buzzed louder than it should. Regulars crowded into booths, the smell of fried chicken and strong coffee mixing in the air. And somewhere between the chatter and clatter, people always asked the same question. Do you still have Grandma May's apple cheddar pie? It wasn't fancy, but it was the dish folks drove across town for. A recipe passed down, a slice of comfort on a plate. By 8 o'clock that night, the kitchen had already crossed it off the chalkboard special. The last piece had been gone for hours. Rosa Alvarez moved between tables with the tired grace of someone who knew how much every tip mattered. Her feet ached, but rent was due, and there was no room for slowing down. She carried 2 plates to a booth when the bell over the front door jingled. A woman swept in wearing a bright white coat, phone raised, voice loud enough for half the diner to hear. All right, everybody, I'm live, and I'm here to taste the famous Grandma May's pie. Let's see if it's as good as people say. A few customers glanced over. Rosa felt her stomach tighten. She already knew what was coming. She approached with her practiced smile. I'm sorry, ma'am. We sold the last slice earlier this evening. But the kitchen just pulled out a fresh apple with vanilla ice cream. It's warm, straight from the oven. The woman lowered her phone a little, eyes narrowing. Out? That's convenient. She swung the screen toward Rosa's name tag. Viewers, meet Rosa. Doesn't it sound suspicious that the famous pie is gone the minute I show up? Hearts and laughing emojis floated across her feed. Rosa kept her voice steady. I promise, Mom, there's nothing suspicious, it just sold out. But the woman leaned in, her tone sharper. Funny, because this exact recipe popped up online last week. Same crust, same spices. Who else could have leaked it except a server looking for attention? She turned the phone back on herself, triumphant. Looks like we found our thief. The words hit harder than a slap. Conversations at nearby tables stopped. Strangers stared. Rosa's chest burned, but she lifted her chin. That isn't true, she said, her voice trembling but clear. I don't bake the food, I just serve it. Mr. Miller, the owner, rushed over, apron stained, panic in his eyes. He had seen what one viral review could do to a business. Ma'am, please, he said quickly, let us make this right. Your meal's on the house. We'll comp dessert too. The woman only smirked, phone still aimed at Rosa. My followers deserve honesty. This place is covering for her. The comments exploded, thousands of strangers typing judgment in real time. Mr. Miller turned to Rosa, his voice low but cold. Give me your apron, you're finished here. Rosa froze, the room tilted. Slowly, with shaking hands, she untied the black apron and folded it once before setting it on the counter. She wanted to shout, to beg someone to believe her, but all she managed was a whisper. I didn't do anything wrong. No one answered. The heavy door closed behind her, cutting off the chatter and clinking plates. Out on the sidewalk, the night air pressed cold against her face. Inside, they were still laughing, still eating, and she was already forgotten. The cold night air stung Rosa's cheeks as she walked home, apron folded under her arm like a reminder of everything she'd just lost. She pulled her thin coat tight, but it did little against the wind. By the time she reached her building, the streetlights flickered above cracked sidewalks and trash bins overflowing at the curb. A paper flapped on her apartment door, corners curling from tape that barely held. She didn't need to read the red letters again to know what it said. Eviction notice. It had been there for days, each glance a countdown clock she couldn't stop. Tonight, the hope of catching up with her paycheck had vanished with her job. Inside, the apartment was dim but warm. The smell of beans and rice drifted from the stove where her sister Eleanor stirred with slow, tired motions. You're home early, Eleanor said, turning with worry in her eyes. Rosa forced a smile. Slow night. But Elena didn't buy it. She glanced toward the door, toward the notice. We can't afford slow nights, Rosa. Not with rent due and the light bill already late. From the couch, little Maddie looked up from her crayons, her curls falling into her eyes. Auntie, you're going to come to my school play tomorrow, right? You promised. Rosa knelt, brushing the hair back from Maddie's face. Of course, sweetheart, she whispered, though her chest tightened with the thought that she might not even have bus fare by morning. Eleanor set down the spoon, her voice low but steady. "You've been working double shifts for months, and it's still not enough. What happened tonight?" Rosa's hands tightened around the strap of her lunchbox. "It doesn't matter," she murmured. They don't want me anymore." Silence stretched between them. Eleanor stepped closer, resting a hand on Rosa's shoulder. "You've carried too much on your own, but you're not alone, not here. We'll figure this out." Later, when the apartment grew quiet, Rosa sat on the edge of the thin mattress in the corner she called her room. She opened the dented lunchbox and pulled out the stained recipe card, her mother's handwriting curling across the page. "Use real butter if you can. Taste the apples first." Simple notes, but they carried the weight of a whole childhood. Her fingers traced the faded ink as if it could steady her racing heart. This pie wasn't stolen. It wasn't some trend off the internet. It was the only piece of her mother she had left, and now strangers had turned it into a weapon against her. A single tear slipped down her cheek, hot and uninvited. For the first time since walking out of the diner, she let it fall. Across town, in a squat brick building with a peeling sign that read WCRX Community Radio, Nate Price was finishing his late shift. The station wasn't glamorous. His desk was cluttered with old flyers, empty coffee cups, and a microphone that buzzed whenever he tapped it too hard. But for 2 decades, it had been his place. His voice had carried over this town like an old friend, steady, familiar, trusted. He wasn't chasing ratings or viral fame. His audience was farmers driving before dawn, parents catching the school closing list, retirees who still kept a radio on the kitchen counter. They didn't need flash, they just wanted the truth in a voice they knew. During a break, Nate scrolled through his phone. A live stream popped up, tagged local diner drama. He tapped without thinking. The clip filled his screen. A woman in a white coat held her phone high, her voice sharp and theatrical. "Looks like we found our thief," she said, angling the camera toward a waitress whose name tag read Rosa. The comments poured in. Hearts, laughing faces, words too cruel to repeat. Nate leaned forward. He knew that diner. He'd been there on Wednesday evening, just after work, and he remembered staring at the chalkboard above the counter. A thick line of chalk had already crossed off Grandma May's apple cheddar pie. Sold out before supper. He replayed the video, pausing at the timestamp in the corner. 8:17, Friday night. If the pie had been gone since midweek, something didn't add up. Nate rubbed his jaw, unsettled. He'd covered enough small-town scandals to know how quickly a name could be ruined. You didn't need evidence, just a camera and a crowd willing to believe the worst. The broadcast clock ticked toward the weather update. Nate leaned into the mic, delivered the forecast in his calm, reliable tone, then switched the board back to silence. His mind was racing. He jotted a note on his pad. Miller's Corner, check receipts. Pie marked out Wednesday. His handwriting was messy, but the thought was sharp. Closing the station for the night, Nate pulled on his jacket and stepped into the cold. Salt crunched under his boots as he walked toward his truck. He wasn't a lawyer, and he wasn't a cop. But he had a microphone, a stubborn streak, and a gut that told him Rosa Alvarez was being crushed by a lie. Tomorrow, he promised himself, he'd start asking questions. Because in a town like this, silence was just another kind of guilt. Saturday morning, Miller's Corner looked the same as it always had. Coffee brewing, bacon sizzling, the same neon sign buzzing in the window. But inside, the staff moved with unease, as if everyone was pretending nothing had happened the night before. Nate walked in, notebook in hand, jacket still smelling faintly of the cold outside. He ordered a plain coffee, then asked the owner if they could talk. Mr. Miller hesitated, but led him into the cramped office behind the counter. Papers piled high, a dusty clock ticking too loud on the wall. "I just want to see the order records," Nate said evenly. "Nothing more. Folks out there are already talking, and if you want this place's name cleared, the truth is the only way." Reluctantly, Miller handed over a stack of printouts. Nate flipped through until he found what he was looking for, a scribbled note at 4:12 Friday afternoon. Apple cheddar pie, sold out. Below it, in rushed handwriting, was a set of initials, M.M. Mandy, the new pastry hire. Nate leaned back in the chair, his brows furrowing. The live stream had gone up at 8:17, 4 hours after the pie was marked gone. If it was already sold out, then why was Rosa accused of hiding it? Still, Mandy's name on the sheet stirred doubt. Had Rosa somehow convinced her co-worker to cover for her? Was there more to the story than Rosa had admitted? "Mind if I check the alley camera?" Nate asked. The dishwasher, a college kid who had overheard, pulled up grainy footage on his phone. Together they watched Rosa leave at the end of her shift. No bag, no hidden box, just her dented lunch pail. Too neat, too clean, almost staged. For the first time, Nate felt a flicker of unease. Maybe the internet hadn't been entirely wrong. Maybe Rosa had slipped the recipe out another way. Maybe he was defending someone who didn't deserve it. He closed the file slowly, the weight of doubt pressing down. But then he remembered her face in that video. Not angry, not defensive, just broken. Lies usually came with noise. Rosa had looked more like someone stripped of her voice entirely. He tapped his pen against the page, scribbling in his notebook. Mandy? Recipe online? Rosa's role? When he stepped back into the diner, the morning light felt sharper, unforgiving. He wasn't sure what he believed anymore, but he knew he couldn't stop here. If he was wrong, he'd owe his listeners an apology. But if he was right, then Rosa's whole life had been torn apart for nothing. Either way, he needed her side of the story. By late afternoon, Nate found himself standing in front of a weathered brick building with chipped paint and a broken buzzer. Rosa's address looked like a place people passed without noticing. He knocked, half expecting no one to answer. Elena opened the door, her eyes sharp with suspicion. "Can I help you?" "My name's Nate Price. I run the morning show on WCRX," he explained, voice steady. "I'm not here to bother you. I just think your sister deserves better than what the internet is saying." Eleanor studied him for a long second, then stepped aside. "Come in, but don't stay long." Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of rice and onions. Maddie sat at the kitchen table, crayons scattered across the surface, drawing a sun with too many rays. Rosa was folding laundry on the couch, her shoulders tense. She froze when she saw Nate. "If you're from the diner," she said flatly, "I don't have anything to say." "I'm not," Nate replied. "But I saw what happened. And I saw something else, the order log. The pie was gone long before you were accused. Still, people think you leaked the recipe. I need to hear it from you." Rosa let out a bitter laugh. "People don't want the truth. They want drama. And now my name is ruined." Eleanor crossed her arms, standing near her sister. "She's worked herself to the bone for this family. She doesn't have time for drama." Nate didn't argue, he just waited, notebook resting on his knee. Finally, Rosa walked over to a small shelf and pulled down her dented metal lunchbox. The latch squeaked as she opened it, her hands trembling. Inside was a folded recipe card, its edges yellowed and smudged with oil. She held it out, but didn't let go right away. "This," she whispered, "is all I have left of her." Eleanor placed a hand on her sister's back, steadying her. "Our mum used to make that pie when we barely had groceries," she explained softly. "Cheddar in the crust wasn't some trick, it was survival." Nate took the card gently, scanning the faded handwriting. Simple notes filled the page. "Taste the apples first, use real butter if you can." And at the top, written in block letters, was the name Apple Cheddar Pie, May Alvarez. It wasn't just a recipe, it was proof. Proof that this pie was part of their family long before a chalkboard special or a viral video. Rosa's voice cracked. "That woman called me a thief, but this is my mother's. It's the only piece of her I have." Nate set the card back in the lunchbox with care. "People need to hear this," he said, his voice low. "Not just because it clears your name, because it tells the truth." Rosa shook her head, wiping her eyes quickly. "The truth doesn't keep the lights on." Nate stood, sliding his notebook into his jacket. "Maybe not on its own, but sometimes when the right people listen, it can." For the first time, Rosa met his eyes, and in the quiet space between them, something shifted. A fragile thread of trust. Sunday morning, Nate sat at his kitchen table with a chipped mug of coffee and his old laptop humming like it might give out any second. The apartment smelled faintly of dust and vinyl, relics of a life spent chasing small-town stories. He pulled up the live stream again, watching frame by frame. The woman in the white coat had a whole channel of similar videos, clips of her storming into shops, accusing clerks, stirring chaos for clicks. A bakery shortchanging her, a coffee shop watering down lattes. Always the same script: go live, spark outrage, rake in views. Nate scribbled in his notebook, outrage as business model. Still, the recipe itself nagged at him. He drove to the county library, its aisles lined with sagging shelves and forgotten cookbooks. After half an hour of flipping through plastic binders, he found it. A church fundraiser cookbook from the early 90s. On page 62 sat the recipe: apple cheddar pie, contributed by May Alvarez. He sat back in his chair, a slow breath leaving him. The truth had roots, older and deeper than the drama playing out online. That evening, he returned to Miller's Corner. Mandy, the new pastry cook, was dusting flour from her apron, her eyes darting nervously when Nate introduced himself. I don't want trouble," she said quickly, wringing her hands. "I just needed this job. If Mr. Miller thinks I caused all this, I'll be gone." Nate softened his voice. "I'm not here to cost you work. I just need to know where you first saw that recipe." She glanced toward the kitchen door as if someone might overhear. "My grandma used to make it," she whispered. "Every church potluck, every holiday. She said she got it from May Alvarez. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that pie." Her voice cracked, and she looked down at her shoes. "I swear I never thought it was a secret. I didn't know Rosa's mum was May. I just thought it was ours." Nate nodded slowly, the pieces fitting together. The diner had taken a recipe that already belonged to the community, slapped a name on it, and claimed it as their own. When the live streamer wanted drama, Rosa had been the perfect scapegoat. Driving home, Nate recorded a note into his phone, his voice low but firm. "This isn't theft, it's history. A family's recipe turned into a weapon by greed and gossip. And if the internet can tear someone down in a night, then maybe a microphone can set things right." The city lights blurred past his windshield. Somewhere out there, Rosa was still sitting in a cramped apartment, wondering how much lower life could sink. And Nate knew one thing for sure. Tomorrow, he wasn't just chasing a story. He was fighting for her name. By Saturday night, whispers had spread across town. Miller's Corner wasn't just a diner anymore. It was the stage for a scandal people couldn't stop talking about. Rosa's name was on everyone's lips, most of them repeating the lie. Nate knew the only way forward was through. He convinced Mr. Miller to hold a meeting after closing. Chairs were pulled down from tables, the fryer shut off, neon lights outside still buzzing faintly. The smell of grease lingered in the quiet room. Rosa sat at one end of the long table, her hands folded tight in her lap. She didn't want to be there, but Eleanor had walked her in and squeezed her shoulder before leaving, promising, "You're stronger than you think." Across from her sat Mandy, fidgeting with flour still on her sleeves. Mr. Miller hovered near the counter, caught between fear for his business and guilt over his choice. Then the door swung open. The woman in the white coat swept in, phone raised high, her live feed already rolling. "Well, well," she said, her voice carrying. "A little courtroom drama in a greasy spoon. My followers will love this." Nate didn't waste time. He laid a folder on the table, spreading papers like cards. "Here's the order log," he said, tapping one page. 4:12 Friday afternoon. Pie marked sold out. Here's Mandy's initials, confirming it. And here, he placed a photocopy of the old church cookbook on the table. A recipe printed in this community long before you ever pointed a camera at anyone. Written by May Alvarez, Rosa's mother. The live streamer's smirk faltered, but she tried to hold her ground. "That doesn't prove Rosa didn't post it online. You're just spinning a sob story." Rosa's hands shook as she opened her lunchbox and placed the stained recipe card on the table. Her mother's handwriting glowed faintly under the diner's overhead light. "This is hers," Rosa said, her voice breaking but steady. "This is all I have left of her. Do you really think I'd throw it online for strangers to steal?" The phone's screen filled with comments. At first, a trickle. "This isn't right. She's got proof." Then a flood. Angry emojis, demands for apology, messages calling the live streamer a bully. Her hand trembled as the words scrolled faster than she could read. "Shame on you. Liar. Take it down." Her face flushed. She lowered the phone an inch, then two, before finally stabbing the screen and cutting the feed. The silence that followed was heavier than any insult. Mandy lifted her head, voice soft but clear. "She's telling the truth. My grandma made that pie too. Everyone knew it came from May Alvarez. Rosa didn't steal anything." Mr. Miller's shoulders sagged. He turned to Rosa, shame written across his face. "I should have stood up for you that night. Instead, I let fear win. I'm sorry." For the first time since that terrible evening, Rosa felt the room tilt in her favour. She wasn't just the accused waitress anymore, she was someone being heard. And Nate, watching it all unfold, knew this was only the beginning. The back room of the diner was silent, the kind of silence that made every creak in the floor sound louder than it should. Rosa sat with her mother's recipe card still on the table, her hands resting gently on it like she was guarding a piece of her own soul. Mr. Miller finally broke the silence. "Rosa, I owe you more than words. I fired you in front of strangers and I let their noise drown out your truth. I'll reinstate your job with back pay, whatever it takes." Rosa's throat tightened. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes shifted to the woman in the white coat, who stood stiffly near the door, her phone dark now, her confidence gone. Nate leaned forward. "You started this storm," he said calmly, but with steel in his voice. "You don't get to walk away like nothing happened. Thousands of people saw your lie. Now they'll see the truth, but they'll also see how you make it right." All eyes turned back to Rosa. She hadn't asked for this power, but it was hers now. For a moment, anger rose in her chest, the temptation to demand punishment, to make the woman who humiliated her feel just as small. But then she thought of Maddie's face, of Elena working double shifts, of the weight of living powerless for so long. Her first act of power couldn't be revenge. Rosa drew in a slow breath. "I don't want you in jail," she said quietly, looking straight at the live streamer. "I don't want to ruin you, but you will make this right. Every dollar you earned off that video goes to Haven House, the women's shelter on West Main. And for a year, you'll work there. No camera, no followers, just serving meals, scrubbing floors, helping people who don't get to hide behind a screen." The live streamer's jaw tightened. "That's ridiculous," she snapped, though her voice wavered. Nate's eyes locked on hers. "Then we release everything. The order logs, the cookbook, the lies you've spread before. You'll be finished before the week's out." The woman's bravado cracked. She looked around the room, at Mandy nodding, at Mr. Miller's disappointed face, at Rosa still holding her mother's recipe card like a shield. Finally, her shoulders slumped. "Fine," she muttered. Then louder, as Nate raised an eyebrow. "Fine, I'll do it." Rosa didn't smile. She just nodded once. "Good, because now you'll learn what real desperation looks like." For the first time since that awful night, Rosa felt steady again. Not because she had destroyed her accuser, but because she had chosen something stronger, compassion lined with iron. Nate closed his notebook, the corner of his mouth lifting in quiet respect. He had come for facts. What he witnessed was something better. A young woman reclaiming her voice. By the following week, Miller's Corner looked different. Not in its bricks or neon sign, those were the same, but in the way people walked in. They weren't whispering anymore, they were waiting. On the front door, under the open hours, a new sheet of paper was taped. "We were wrong. Rosa Alvarez did not steal anything. This pie belongs to our neighbourhood. We are sorry." Inside, the chalkboard special read in looping white letters, "Neighbourhood Apple Cheddar Pie, May's Way." Next to it hung a framed photo of May Alvarez, smiling with a pie fresh from the oven. Beneath it, "Original Recipe by May." Rosa stood behind the counter, apron tied neat, still nervous. She hadn't wanted to come back, but Elena had insisted. You don't hide when the truth is finally on your side. The first customers stepped in. An older man tipped his cap. "Good to see you again, Rosa." A woman with silver hair touched her arm. "Your mama's pie fed more families than you know. I'm glad her name is where it belongs." It wasn't applause, but it was better. It was belonging. Later that afternoon, Eleanor arrived with Maddie in tow. The little girl's eyes widened at the wall near the booths, where children's drawings fluttered in a patchwork of colour. Crayon pies, crooked letters spelling, "Thank you, Miss Rosa," hearts and suns. "That one's mine," Maddie said proudly, pointing to her picture taped right in the middle. A pie with a big yellow sun above it and the words "May's Pie" forever scrawled underneath. Rosa bent down, hugging her niece tight. For the first time since that awful night, tears came, not from shame but from being seen. Even Mandy, her sleeves dusted with flour, stepped out of the kitchen. "Want to help me roll dough later?" she asked softly. "We could do it together, the way your mum and my grandma used to." Rosa smiled through tears. "I'd like that." That evening, Nate spoke into his microphone at the radio station. His voice carried steady through kitchens, car stereos, and farm trucks across the county. "Folks," he said, "sometimes the loudest voices aren't the truest. Sometimes truth lives in old recipe cards, in neighbours who remember, in kids who draw pies for their heroes. Rosa Alvarez's story isn't just hers, it's ours. Because when a community chooses dignity over drama, everybody wins." Back at the diner, Rosa wiped down a table as Eleanor and Maddie shared a slice of maize pie at the counter. The bell over the door jingled and more neighbours stepped in. The smell of apples and cheddar filled the room, the same recipe that once shamed her now stitching her name back into the town. For the first time in weeks, Rosa didn't feel like someone surviving day to day. She felt like she belonged. That night, long after Miller's Corner had closed, Rosa lingered by the wall where children's drawings covered the paint in crooked squares of colour. Crayon pies, smiling suns, and little notes in uneven handwriting. "Thank you, Miss Rosa." Her eyes stopped on one with bright yellow letters, "May's Pie Forever," Maddie's drawing. She pressed her hand gently over it, smiling through tired tears. For weeks she had carried only shame, strangers calling her a thief, the eviction notice on her door, the fear of not knowing how to make it to tomorrow. Now, in this little diner, with its buzzing neon and chipped mugs, she had her name back. And more than that, she had her mother's name back. Mr. Miller stepped from the kitchen holding 2 mugs of coffee. He set one in front of Rosa. "I can't undo what I did," he said quietly. "But this place will carry your mother's name as long as it stands. That's a promise." Rosa wrapped her hands around the warm cup, nodded once. She didn't hand out forgiveness yet, but she accepted the promise. When she walked home, Elena and Maddie walked with her. The night air was cool, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. At the corner, Maddie skipped ahead, turning back to call, "Auntie, tomorrow can we bake together? You, me and Mum?" Rosa laughed softly, the sound catching even her by surprise. "Yes," she said, "tomorrow we bake." Across town, in a dimly lit radio booth, Nate leaned into his microphone, wrapping up the day's story. His steady voice carried over airwaves into kitchens and truck cabs. This town doesn't need another scandal. What it needs are reminders that truth matters. And sometimes, truth comes in the form of an old recipe card and a young woman brave enough to stand in it. The phone lines lit up, not with complaints, but with gratitude. One caller's voice cracked through the static. "Nate, thanks for telling it straight. People needed to hear this." Nate smiled, scribbling one last note in his battered notebook. Truth still has an audience. Back at the apartment, Rosa tucked Maddie into bed. She sat for a long moment at the window, looking out at the city. Life was still hard, rent, bills, long shifts. But she didn't feel erased anymore. She wasn't just surviving in the shadows of other people's lies. She belonged to a story now, her mother's story, her own story. And for the first time in a long while, Rosa whispered the words and believed them. "I'm home." And so, Rosa's story reminds us that dignity is fragile, but it can be rebuilt when truth and compassion stand stronger than lies. A single recipe card, written in a mother's hand, carried not just ingredients but a legacy of resilience and love. The lesson is simple. Sometimes the loudest voices are wrong, and the quiet truth, if we choose to listen, is what really matters. Now let me ask you, if you were in Rosa's place, would you have chosen forgiveness over revenge? Or would you have wanted harsher justice? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until next time, take care of your heart, hold on to the truths that matter, and we'll meet again in the next story here on Rain Inside.